My dreams is to become a successful singer and guitarist and performers music around the world.
Every season of America's Got Talent gives the audience one contestant who seems to come from nowhere, dazzles the room for 90 seconds, and disappears back into the internet's short memory. And then, every so often, someone walks out who only looks like she came from nowhere. Underneath the surprise is a decade of work that the cameras never bothered to show. That is the story of Nene Royal. And once you understand where she actually came from, her audition stops looking like luck and starts looking like something closer to inevitable. Season 21 of America's Got Talent had already run through dozens of hopefuls by the time a slight, soft-spoken teenager walked out under the lights of the Dolby Theatre. She introduced herself the way a lot of nervous 15-year-olds might, giggling, glancing offstage toward her father, admitting she was scared. Then she mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that the next day was her 16th birthday. The room did what rooms do in that situation. It broke into happy birthday, judges included, and for a moment the whole broadcast felt like it was about to be a sweet, forgettable segment about a kid a long way from home. She told the judges her name was Nene, that she had flown in from Phuket, Thailand, and that her dream was simple and enormous at the same time. She wanted to be a touring superstar. It's the kind of thing thousands of kids say on that stage every season, and it usually sounds like exactly what it is, a wish spoken out loud, without much evidence behind it yet. Then she picked up an electric guitar, and the girl who had just apologized for being nervous vanished. What replaced her was something closer to a seasoned rock frontwoman than a ninth grader. She launched into a stripped-down, guitar-driven rendition of Zombie, the 1994 Cranberries classic, and within a few bars the audience's polite curiosity turned into something louder. She threw her voice into the chorus with a rasp that had no business coming from someone her age, and by the final notes the crowd was on its feet. The judges' reactions were about as enthusiastic as AGT panels get. There was genuine surprise at how completely her voice and stage presence had transformed the moment the music started, praise for how mature and controlled her guitar work was for a performer so young, and open astonishment that this was, by her own account, the biggest stage she had ever stood on. All four judges said yes, sending her straight through to the next round. Industry press would later note that her audition became the single most watched clip to come out of that season, a viral moment that traveled far outside the show's usual audience within days. If you've ever been underestimated by a room that decided who you were before you opened your mouth, you already understand the particular satisfaction of what happened next. But almost nobody watching at home understood how long she had already been building toward that exact moment. Here is the part almost no one outside Thailand ever saw, and it's the part that changes how you hear everything else. Long before Los Angeles, long before a television crew ever pointed a camera at her, Nene was a working street performer in her own city. Every weekend, she set up at the Naka Weekend Market in Phuket, guitar case open on the pavement, amplifier running off whatever power source the stall could offer, playing over the noise of sizzling street food, passing scooters, and tourists far more interested in souvenir shopping than in stopping to listen to a teenager sing. She performed there regularly with two local bands, Ozone and Miniheart, cutting her teeth in front of crowds that had absolutely no obligation to pay attention to her. Sit with what that actually feels like for a second, because most people never have to live it. You pour everything into a song, and half the people walking past treat you like part of the scenery. Maybe one person in 50 actually stops. There is a specific kind of loneliness in performing for people who didn't choose to be your audience, and there is also a specific kind of toughness that grows out of surviving it. When you've learned to hold a crowd's attention in a place that gives you no reason to expect it, a television studio full of people who are already looking at you and rooting for you holds a lot less terror. That's the advantage nobody at the judges' table could see. The trembling, giggly teenager who introduced herself before the music started, and the commanding performer who took over once the guitar came in, were never two different people. They were the same girl who had spent years learning to turn a distracted crowd into a captive one, night after night, for tips instead of trophies. What makes her rise even more striking is that there was no conservatory, no famous mentor, no formal lessons behind any of it. By her own account and her official biography, Nene picked up a guitar for the first time around age 6 or 7 and essentially taught herself from there, watching videos online, copying what she heard by ear, and repeating it until her fingers caught up with what was in her head. That's the unglamorous, invisible part of the story. Thousands of hours nobody filmed, spent alone with a guitar and a phone screen, long before anyone outside her family thought there was anything remarkable happening. By the time she reached the AGT stage, Zombie wasn't remotely the ceiling of what she could play. It was closer to a warm-up. She has built a live repertoire that stretches from delicate, melodic passages to full-throttle hard rock, a range that helped her land a featured artist partnership with the instrument company Enya Music while she was still a schoolgirl, the kind of endorsement plenty of adult musicians spend entire careers chasing. The scale of her following backs up how far that talent had already traveled before American audiences discovered her. Even before the AGT audition went viral, she had built an online audience across platforms that numbered in the millions, mostly through short clips of her guitar playing and covers, filmed and posted with no guarantee that any of it would ever lead anywhere. The narrative that spread with her audition painted her as an undiscovered nobody who appeared out of thin air, and it made for a nice viral headline, but it isn't accurate. Thailand had been watching this kid rise for years before NBC ever knew her name. She has placed and competed in respected national guitar competitions in Thailand, been recognized as an outstanding performer at band competitions, and appeared on established Thai television programs alongside working professional musicians, all while still a schoolgirl. As of this year, she's been juggling that career with being an 11th grade student at Kajongkiet International School in Phuket. So by the time she boarded a flight to the United States for the first time, she wasn't a wide-eyed beginner hoping for her first taste of a stage. She was a tested, already decorated young musician stepping onto a bigger platform than any she'd stood on before, carrying years of preparation that a first-time audience mistook for beginner's luck. There's something a lot of us recognize in that gap between how the world saw her and who she actually was. You work quietly for years, build something real that almost nobody notices, and then one loud moment happens and strangers act like you were born the day they found you. Nene handled that mismatch with more grace than plenty of adults manage, and mostly let the music make her case for her. There's one more layer to that first performance that most of the cheering crowd probably never clocked. The song itself carries real history, and it isn't a happy one. Zombie was written by Dolores O'Riordan of the Irish band The Cranberries and released in 1994. It wasn't written to be a sing-along. It came out of grief and fury after a real act of violence. On the 20th of March, 1993, bombs planted in litter bins in the English town of Warrington killed 2 children, 3-year-old Jonathan Ball and 12-year-old Tim Parry, and injured dozens of other people. O'Riordan was on tour when the news reached her, and the horror of it stayed with her. She turned that anger into a protest song that refused to treat the violence as normal, and she made a point publicly of separating herself and ordinary Irish people from the paramilitary campaign responsible, pushing back hard against the assumption that her nationality meant she supported it. The song even reaches back to the 1916 Easter Rising, framing the cycle of violence as an old wound that kept reopening while children paid the price. Hold that history next to the scene at the start of this story. A smiling teenager, one day away from turning 16, throwing her whole body into an anthem built out of grief, protest, and a mother's fury, in front of a cheering crowd that mostly had no idea what they were actually applauding. Whether or not she was thinking about Warrington in that exact moment, there's something quietly powerful about a teenage voice from one side of the world channeling a teenage-era protest from another. 2 young people, 3 decades apart, refusing to stay quiet. Zombie has a strange habit of refusing to fade away. When Dolores O'Riordan died unexpectedly in 2018, plenty of people assumed the song would settle into being a cherished deep cut, fondly remembered but slowly slipping out of the wider conversation. Instead, it did the opposite. It became something closer to a stadium anthem, regularly sung in full voice by Irish sports crowds at major tournaments, and it crossed the extraordinary threshold of more than 1 billion combined streams and views, putting it in a very small club of rock songs still finding new listeners decades after release. A 2018 cover by the band Bad Wolves introduced the song to an entirely new, younger audience and reignited conversation about it all over again. And in one of the more moving responses to the song's legacy, Colin Parry, whose son Tim was killed in the Warrington bombing that inspired it, has spoken about the track not as an exploitation of tragedy but as something that turned unbearable grief into remembrance rather than silence. The timing around Nene's own version of the song has been almost eerie. Around the same window her audition was spreading across social media, the Cranberries' back catalogue and archival material were getting fresh attention from longtime fans, keeping Zombie squarely in the cultural conversation from two completely different directions at once. A decades-old Irish protest song and a teenage busker from a Thai night market, colliding at exactly the same moment through the same three chords. That's part of what makes the song remarkable in the first place. It has outlived the woman who wrote it, crossed languages and generations, and keeps finding new voices willing to carry it. Nene is now one link in a chain that stretches back to Aridin herself, whether or not she set out to be part of something that large. The Zombie audition wasn't a one-off fluke that AGT happened to catch on a good night. In the judges' callbacks round, Nene came back and performed Muse's Hysteria, a demanding, technically punishing rock track, and delivered again. A performance that racked up millions of views within a day of being posted online and carried her straight through to the live quarterfinals. Advancing that far means her fate has shifted from 4 judges' opinions to public voting, with viewers in the United States and Puerto Rico deciding how far she goes from here. Getting to that stage meant an actual journey, not just a metaphorical one. She flew from Phuket to the United States with her family, her father, mother, and younger brother, leaving behind the same night markets and school routine that had shaped her for years to rehearse and prepare for a live performance in front of a voting national audience. It's worth remembering that all of this, the travel, the pressure, the unfamiliar country, is happening around a girl who is also, at the same time, an 11th grader with homework and a school schedule waiting for her back home. The show was never going to be the finish line, and she isn't treating it that way. Away from the cameras, she's been working on original material and preparing a debut EP, which marks a real evolution in her career. The shift from a performer known mostly for covers into an artist putting her own songwriting into the world. Her profile has kept climbing outside the AGT bubble, too. This past August, she was recognized as Best New International Artiste at a prominent music convention in Dublin, Ireland, a notable honor for a teenager still building her catalogue, and one that ties back, almost poetically, to the country that produced the very song that first introduced her to a global audience. Whatever happens with the voting, whatever round she ultimately reaches, the through line of her story doesn't really depend on the outcome of one competition. It's the same through line that was true before AGT ever knew her name. A kid who taught herself an instrument from a phone screen, spent years playing for crowds that had every excuse to ignore her, collected recognition in her home country that most international audiences never heard about, and then carried one of rock music's heaviest protest songs onto a stage in front of millions of strangers, with her father watching from the wings exactly the way he probably had 1,000 times before, in far smaller, far louder, far less glamorous places than a Hollywood soundstage. The trembling girl who apologized for being nervous and the performer who tore into Zombie 30 seconds later were never two different people. They were the same story the entire time, and depending on how the voting goes, it sounds like we're only partway through it. So here's the actual question worth asking. Does Nene Royal have what it takes to go all the way in this competition, or is her biggest moment still somewhere ahead of her, waiting for a stage even bigger than this one? Drop your take in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where people land on this one.